Today we're going to cover the results from yesterday's Super Tuesday. There's a lot to get through. I'm going to go really quick. Feel free to pause it if you'd like. But we also did a 6-hour stream last night. Thanks to everybody that showed up. The channel is also 2 years old. We're over 2,200 subscribers. Let's hope we can get that way up by election day. So let's talk about the results. We've got Nikki Haley. She is dropping out of this thing and she has no regrets. She's also not endorsing Donald Trump. She could easily do it later on, but she has not done so yet. She does say it's up to Trump to earn the votes of those in our party and beyond who did not support him. So she's talking about independents, moderates, maybe suburban voters. Either way, she's the last one out. She did win the DC primary the other day. And before we see exactly what she did on Super Tuesday, there's other news from yesterday. In Arizona, Sinema is not going to run for re-election to a second term. We'll cover this race in a future video, but now it looks like it's just going to be a head-to-head matchup between Ruben Gallego and Kari Lake. There's going to be primaries, but Sinema is on the fence if she's going to run again. Now we know she's not, so that's some quick news out of Arizona. So let's see the results on Super Tuesday. Trump won 722 delegates to Haley's 46, and Trump pretty much dominated with one exception. That's in Vermont. Haley was able to win the state by 4 points. It's not a critical state for Trump at all, but nearby states like Massachusetts, Trump won by more than 20 points. Up in Maine, Trump was in the 70s. Now, one thing to keep in mind in some of these states is they're not all closed primaries, so it makes it harder to know how many independents voted in some of these primaries. A lot of them probably did vote for Haley, so primaries are complicated. It's different in different states. Either way, here are the margins for Trump, and we are still waiting for some results to come in, like in Utah. Right now, that's Trump's second worst state, where he's plus 15. In California, which was a closed primary, Trump is up around 60. Even in Colorado, he's up 30. Texas, he's also up 60. So overall, I would say Trump did about a 9 out of 10 in terms of dominance last night. But it's not only about Trump and the Republicans. Democrats also had some primaries. The big storyline there is to see how many voters in some states either vote uncommitted or for someone other than Biden. So here's Biden's margins. And at a glance, of course, he dominated, winning many of these states by 70 or 80 point margins. But the most notable exception is going to be in Minnesota. That is his worst state. He won that, but it was only by 52 points. And relative to the other states, that's noticeably worse. If you go in closer on Minnesota, Biden got almost 71% of the vote. Second place was uncommitted with 19%. Dean Phillips, that's his home state. He pulled in almost 8. And if you look at the individual counties in the Twin Cities, uncommitted got up into the mid-20s. So after the uncommitted vote in Michigan last week, I'm sure this is going to be talked about in the media, and it's going to be something that Biden is going to have to deal with. But there could even be worse news for Biden. The American Samoa, they also had a caucus last night, and somebody other than Biden actually won it. Jason Palmer, he got 56% to Biden's 44. I'm sure a lot of people don't really think about American Samoa. It's there. Here's the results. Biden didn't win. And this Newsweek article says Biden is the first incumbent president to lose a primary in 44 years since Jimmy Carter. Maybe this has staying power. Maybe it fizzles out. We don't know if they're just trying to send a message to Biden or if they're actually going to not show up in November. So those are the presidential primaries, but there are also a lot of other elections for statewide offices or Congress. So again, I'm going to go really quickly through this. All the links will be down below in the description, but let's start in California. Look at that U.S. Senate race. This is a top 2 primary, and there's still vote out there, but the top 2 going on to the general election are Democrat Adam Schiff and Republican Steve Garvey. Katie Porter fell far short. Maybe she runs for another office in the future, but her and Barbara Lee are not going to make it to November. It's going to be Adam and Steve. Of course, Schiff is extremely likely to win in November. Next, let's go to North Carolina. They had primaries for governor, and it's not a surprise, but Josh Stein and Mark Robinson both going to face off in November. That's going to be a great race, and I'm sure there's going to be a ton of fireworks. But there's another race happening in the same state. That's going to be for lieutenant governor. The Democrats have Rachel Hunt advancing to the general election, but Republicans, they actually had 5 candidates crack 10%, and nobody got to 20. And North Carolina is a state that has runoffs on May 14th. So we got a close one here on the Republican side for lieutenant governor. Let's look at the other big Senate race. That's in Texas. For the Democrats, Colin Allred, he avoided a runoff himself. He got over 50%. He's at about 59. He's going to go up against Ted Cruz in the general election. Cruz himself, under 90% of the vote. Many times primaries don't have a lot of bearing on the general election. In this primary, the Democrats had over 950,000 votes. Republicans over 2.2 million. But that does not mean it's going to pan out like that in the fall. Next, let's move on to Alabama in the U.S. House. There were 2 incumbent Republicans facing off in a primary after the maps were redrawn. It was a close one, but Barrymore defeated Jerry Carl by about 3 points. For the Democrats in the new 2nd District, that race is headed to a runoff on April 16th, and this seat is likely to be a flip and a pickup for the Dems. We've got Shomari Figures and Anthony Daniels. They're going to go at it next month. Some more House races. In North Carolina's 6th. This is again going to head to a May 14th runoff. We've got Addison McDowell and Mark Walker, who's already served previously in the U.S. House. Right now, both of them are in the mid-20s. Over in the 13th District, there's a runoff between Kelly Daughtry, and right now it looks like it's going to be Brad Knott. Let's go back to Texas. In the 12th District, there's another runoff on the Republican side between Craig Goldman and John O'Shea. In the 23rd District, that's the huge one that runs along the southern border. On the Republican side, incumbent Tony Gonzalez is going to head to a runoff Brandon Herrera. And in California's 20th, this is the primary to replace Kevin McCarthy. It's a Republican district, and it could be two Republicans headed to the general election. Vince Vaughn is leading the way. He's almost at 40%. Mike Boudreau is down at 24%. Donald Trump did endorse Fong in this race. So those are some of the highlights. There's a lot more there, but I can't go over everything. Let's look a little bit at some exit polling between Trump and Haley. As expected, Haley does better with higher income voters and college graduates. Trump did really well in suburban and urban areas, except in Virginia. Haley won the suburbs and urban areas, but both of them were by narrow margins. CNN also has some exit polling, so take a look at that if you'd like. They ask some different questions, and they break it down in some different ways, like age or gender. So it was a rock-solid night for Trump. A year ago, this is what we all saw coming. It was going to be Trump and Biden. It looks like nothing's really changed. There was a couple of small speed bumps in the way. Trump lost D.C., he lost Vermont. Biden might have a little bit of a problem with uncommitted voters. He did lose American Samoa. But now that Haley is out, as long as she's not actively going to go against Trump, I would assume eventually it's going to be water under the bridge. Now that she's no longer a competitor, it's pretty much Trump all the way unless he decides to step down. And he even has the endorsement from Mitch McConnell. So there's still some things to look for as the race goes on. One of the big things is going to be who Trump selects as his running mate. We're also going to have to see what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. does with his ballot access. He's got to gather signatures in different states. So we'll have a much better idea how the general election is going to look in 2 or 3 months. A lot of voters don't really pay attention to politics until the very end. So whatever polling we're seeing right now could change a little bit or even significantly before November. So next up in this primary season, we've got some more primaries on March 12th, but March 19th, I think, is going to be the more notable day. In addition to the presidential primaries, Ohio is also having its other primaries, including for U.S. Senate. So then we'll get to see which Republican is going to go up against Sherrod Brown. So we're starting to get some questions answered, but I'm going to leave it there for now. So let me know in the comments. What do you think about these results? Was it a great night for Trump and Biden? What about that Senate race in Arizona? Who's Trump going to pick as his running mate? And what about ballot access for third parties? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.